A student at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, put it beautifully. He said, Cliff, I didn't ask to have to decide whether to go to heaven or hell. And I resent God putting me in a position where I have to make that decision. And I said, sir, you're right. I didn't ask to be put in this position either. But now you've been dealt a hand of cards. Play the game as well as you can. Do the best you can. And don't just complain, well, I didn't have any decision about whether to put myself in a place where I'd have to make this kind of decision.
Why were they such firm believers, but it was so hard for everybody else to accept it? If the evidence was so plain, why didn't he rise from the dead and go speak to the Roman soldiers?
You bet. One of the reasons that I trust the New Testament Gospels to be accurate historically is because those Gospels record the doubt, the unbelief, and the sins of Matthew, Mark, John, Peter, Paul. There's a tremendous vulnerability and honesty about how these guys denied Christ, betrayed Christ, deserted Christ. They were not true believers. They were not mesmerized fanatics. They all deserted Christ when he was arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane. I love it. Why? Because that's the way I am. I don't easily believe. I don't easily trust Christ. I doubt it. And I love it that the guys who wrote the New Testament, all of his apostles, were just like me. They doubted. If they all blindly believed and just went along like inept puppies, oh, sure, Jesus, whatever you say. Oh, sure, Jesus, whatever you say. I don't think I'd be able to relate to them very well, because that certainly is not the way I am. See, that's one of the refreshing things about the New Testament Gospels. Brutal honesty. One of the leaders of the first century church, Peter, what did he do to Christ when Christ was arrested? He stood beside him, right? I'm your man. I'm your bud. No. He denied knowing the guy 3 times. A bunch of cowards, just like me. I love it. It's another piece of evidence that those Gospels are not written by true believers, mesmerized fanatics. They're written by real people like you and me that got a bunch of doubts, a bunch of questions.
One more question.
You bet.
You believe God is omniscient, right? I mean,
omniscient, right?
Yeah, yes. Does he know in advance what's going to happen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. He put the tree in the Garden of Eden, the forbidden fruit.
Yes, sir.
Then, therefore, he knew that Adam and Eve would take from it, yes?
Yes, sir.
Pardon my language, it sounds kind of thing to do. I mean, that's
okay.
Not a very nice guy.
Okay, now the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is simply the decision. You're either going to freely choose to do it my way, or you're going to do it your way.
Right.
In other words, God gave us free will. And free will is real. It's not make-believe.
Right.
I don't have to do it God's way. I can do it my way. Now, sir, that's why people go to hell.
I understand that, but you're saying that he already knew what they were going to choose before they did it. So if he knew they were going to choose it, why did he put it there and say, well, that was your choice, but, I mean, I knew you were going to do it anyway, so,
well,
screw you.
The it is the issue of free will. The it is not so much a tree, sir. The it is, you either choose to obey me, to trust me, or you choose to distrust me and disobey me. The tree is rather insignificant.
Oh, yeah, I agree. But the point is, he still, whatever, he puts these temptations there, knowing full well that they're going to take them, whether they choose to or not. He knows that they're either not going to do it, or that they're going to do it. He knew that they were going to do it, in that case.
Yeah, and he knows that he knows what I'm going to freely choose to do.
Okay.
And part of that is I'm going to choose to sin in the next year. I'm not going to live a morally perfect life, that's for sure.
It just doesn't seem to make much sense then. I mean, it seems like he wanted to cast them out of the Garden of Eden.
Okay, good. Now, you're raising a very good question, which is, if God's all-knowing, then how can we really have free will? Because he knows in advance what we're going to do.
No, not that he's forcing us to do it, but he knows what we're going to do.
Okay,
We're
good.
going to choose to do
Well,
it.
then I don't need to answer it. You've answered it already. You're right. He doesn't force us to do it. When we say that God's all-knowing, what we mean is God is outside of the dimension of time. God is eternal. So God sees the year 2000 today. God sees the year 3000, if history goes on that long, today. So God's all-knowing, but I'm free. Why didn't God cause Hitler's mother to have a miscarriage? I don't know.
No, neither do I. But according, I mean, he had some belief, some purpose in mind for Hitler. I assume by going by your faith. Yes, is that correct? I mean, that's the reason.
Yes, God has a purpose for Hitler, but God's purpose for Hitler is not to slaughter Jews. God's purpose for Hitler is to love and worship him and to love and serve people.
But he knew he was going to slaughter all the Jews.
Yeah, God knew that Hitler would abuse his free will and choose to slaughter Jews instead of love Jews, correct?
It's kind of harsh on the Jewish people. So, I mean,
but just because God knows it doesn't mean that he's forcing Hitler to slaughter Jews.
Well, going back to the tree, that wasn't something anybody had any choice of either. Nobody else put that tree there except for God. Nobody else. I mean, it's irrelevant if it's a tree or whatever.
Right.
But I mean, the fact is that nobody else, there was no other people around to make the choice to put the tree there. That was God's choice. That was his will to put the tree there. Okay?
Right.
Whether I choose to commit a sin later, that was my choice. The options were presented by myself, by other people. But, you know, there was nobody else there. He put that tree there. He said, eat from it and you're out. Or maybe he didn't say that, but that was what he knew was going to happen.
Right.
Yet he put it there and he put it there. Nobody else presented them with that option. It was him.
Well, sir, you and I are in the same position Adam and Eve were in. A student at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, put it beautifully. He said, Cliff, I didn't ask to have to decide whether to go to heaven or hell. And I resent God putting me in a position where I have to make that decision. And I said, sir, you're right. I didn't ask to be put in this position either. But now you've been dealt a hand of cards. Play the game as well as you can. Do the best you can. And don't just complain, well, I didn't have any decision about whether to put myself in a place where I'd have to make this kind of decision.
Okay. I mean, I understand
God's given you your sexuality. God's given me my sexuality. Now, God says, here is the way I want you to express your sexuality. And you and I have to decide whether we're going to say yes or no. Now, you and I didn't ask to have to make that decision.
What exactly are you referring to?
You have a sex drive, I have a sex drive.
Right.
Jesus has revealed that the purpose of our sexuality is to make a lifelong commitment to one person if we're going to choose to be married, and then to enjoy sex within that lifelong commitment. Now, you and I can indulge in fornication, bisexuality, homosexuality, bestiality. We can have sex with a vibrator. There are a lot of options out there. But God says, do it this way. And I have to make a decision. No, I'm not going to do it your way. I'm going to do it my way. Or yes, I'll do it your way. I didn't ask to have to make that decision.
Right.
You're right. God has given me the ability to make money. I can hoard all my money for myself, or I can give some of my money away to God's unfed children. I don't have to do either. But I can promise you, Jesus says, Cliff, you better write big checks, son. You better write some big checks to help some hurting people. I don't have to do it, but Jesus is going to hold me responsible.
The idea of something just existing forever and that's just what it was. That's just kind of strange.
No, there are only 4 options that I know of. If you know a 5th, please tell me.
I just don't see that level of order just existing for an eternity. I would think that it seems to make, I don't know, everything's moving in a certain direction, and if you can move it backwards in your head, then it's all like in one place. And I mean, who knows exactly what happened before?
Right. Okay, so it's more a philosophical question. In the beginning, there's nothing. In the beginning, there's matter and energy. In the beginning, there's an intelligent mind who creates this world and sets it ticking and withdraws. In the beginning, there's an intelligent mind who creates this complex watch, but actually wants to be involved. Now, which of those 4 options, or if you know of a 5th and 6th one, please tell me, which one do you think makes most sense? What's most reasonable? What's most plausible?
I would probably say the matter and energy one.
Okay, and the reason I can't agree with you is because I know that this man has the ability to love her. She has the ability to love her. I have the ability to love them. And you cannot put love in a test tube. There's more to love than matter and energy. There's this innate human ability to genuinely care for somebody.
but what if it was discovered, like, although I know that neuroscience isn't like far enough along to where they could actually prove this, but what if it was discovered that that was just like a result of an extremely complex series of processes going on in your head that are actually physically based?
Well, what if it was discovered that I'm just a bad dream you're having?
Well, I doubt that.
It's possible. Anything's possible.
No, but you see, that's
But you see
something
what you
that-
just did to me. You said, well, what if it is
All
one
right,
day
okay.
discovered that? Come on, bud.
Okay.
How can I, as a thinking human being, deal with that? That is such a faith statement. There's
It
just no
wasn't a
basis
faith
for it.
Statement.
What?
It was, what if, okay. Yes, just like hypothetically.
Yeah, incredibly hypothetical.
Okay, but it would, once this was found, which I would think that it most likely is, because we're discovering that certain chemicals do certain things to our brains all the time, that scientifically you could test different things. And
Uh-huh.
You test it and it comes out, and I mean, you see what I'm saying? It would be a
Fine.
testable thing. It wouldn't
Okay,
be like
fine.
a what if thing.
Then I go up to this guy, punch him in the face. You say, hey man, why'd you hit this guy? And I say, well, obviously my biochemical reactions forced me to hit him. So why would you hold me responsible for hitting him in the face if you understand I don't have a free will? I'm just a highly complex biochemical reaction. If I date rape this woman, why would you hold me responsible for that? I'm going to say to you, it's just a biochemical reaction. I just have a sex drive that just made me do it.
Well, I mean, maybe that's not really the way I want to view it, but at the same time, if that was what the case was and we were just really nothing more than really complex chemical reactions,
Right.
then we could say that we want to stop your reaction because it's trying to harm other reactions.
Oh, no, no, no. You'd stop my reaction because you have to stop my reaction because that's your biochemical makeup.
Sure,
See, there is no free will then.
that's true.
There is no such thing as love. They're simply complex biochemical reactions. Now, I'm sorry, my experience of life totally contradicts that. My experience of life is that with this guy who was standing here before, I could have really ripped into him. And I have done it on times before. That guy was so rude, he was so poor in his thinking, it was embarrassing. But I can try and be patient. I can try and be somewhat respectful to a rascal like him. Or I can just light into him. And then tonight, when I sit on my bedside, I can judge myself. And I can say, Cliff, when you were disrespectful and rude, that was wrong. Don't do that again. Cliff, when you were patient and respectful with a guy who was really playing games, from your perspective, and was really making no sense, it was good the way you were patient with him.
Okay.
See, my ability to judge myself shows me that I'm more than a biochemical reaction.
What if that's just like a property that develops through these reactions? Like,
Yeah, but there still is no free will then. If you reduce me to simply a complex biochemical reaction, then although it might be incredibly complex, which I agree with you, I'm still a machine. I am a machine, a
throughout
computer.
like the world, there's properties that develop with increasing complexity,
Yes,
like throughout biology.
right.
So
We understand that
could be a-
complexity better and better as we do good science.
Well, yeah, and when the complexity increases to a certain level, then other properties form. And maybe free will could be a property. You don't think so?
It's impossible.
It's impossible.
It's impossible if you
Flat out
reduce
impossible. There's no
if you
way.
reduce reality to matter and energy. You've reduced reality. It's not me who's doing it, it's you doing it. Which means we are machines. There's no me that is separate from the machine. There's simply the machine. See, in order for there to be free will, there's got to be a me that stands separate from my biochemical reaction. There's got to be a soul.
What if that was a development of your society that you live in? Like, the
Good.
society doesn't think it's good for you to rape people, so that's where you get that measure of what you should and shouldn't do.
You bet. Then I am still a machine that has been programmed by my environment.
Sure.
And that's why a visiting professor at Harvard, when he asked his history class, who is responsible for the Holocaust, all those Harvard students said, Nobody's responsible for the Holocaust because we all are simply machines.
You've been talking a lot about free will and stuff, and about, if I can get this right, justification or innocence through ignorance. You're talking about people that didn't know who Jesus was, and they're still regarded to be in favor with God. Like, then why do Christians go around the world telling people about Jesus when, if that's true,
Right.
then I mean, why do I bother leaving my home to go tell people?
You bet. I go to the mission field for the same reason that I come to the University of Florida. For the same reason that in my neighborhood where I live, I seek to communicate Christ to my neighbors. And that's because, for a reason that I don't understand, God chooses to communicate his love and his truth through people. Now, obviously, Hebrews chapter 11 teaches that Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Rahab, a Gentile prostitute, people who never heard about Christ, are going to be in heaven. Well, why are they going to be in heaven? Because they put their faith in God. They responded to all the information that God gave them. And yet, for a reason that I don't understand, God chooses to communicate through people. I mean, if I were God, I'd probably do it just angels. I'd have a bunch of angels down here at University of Florida. But for a reason that I don't understand, God chooses to use people to communicate the truth of Christ to other people.
I think it's possible. I think people can be deluded enough to believe anything.
Fine. So what you have is,
Perhaps they went
you've
and they
got
saw an empty tomb.
a bunch of guys
They
saying,
felt that
I saw
that
Jesus
had
risen from the dead. I ate with a guy. I talked with a guy. I put my hands in the nail prints in his hands. I saw the wound in his side. They making all of that up, and then they're willing to die to cover up what they know to be a lie. Or you're saying they're deluded. So they get so specific about their eyewitness accounts about the risen Christ. It's incredible. Just read the Gospels.
But exactly, that's all in the Gospels. Who wrote the accounts of that trial?
Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Peter, Paul, James.
Weren't they the ones? Who was killed then in that trial?
Which trial?
Who was killed? Who was asked and then killed?
Who was asked and then killed? James, the brother of John, was put to death by the sword. Peter, Andrew, Philip, Simon the Zealot, James, son of Alphaeus, Bartholomew were crucified to crosses. Matthew was put to death by the sword, who wrote the Gospel of Matthew. Thaddeus was shot through with arrows, and James, the younger brother of Jesus, was stoned to death. Why? Because they claimed Jesus had risen from the dead, he is Lord, and we're not going to buy into emperor worship, which was a common way to unify the Roman Empire in the first century. So they lost their lives. Why? Because they claimed to have seen Jesus risen from the dead. That's why they died.
The Christ that you say he is, any more than the evidence states that if I were to die for you, I would be the Christ.
Okay, the evidence that points to Jesus being the truth is his sinless life, his tremendous ethical teachings, his death where, nailed to a wooden crossbeam, instead of cursing his enemies the way I probably would have, he prayed, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. But fourthly, and most importantly, 3 days after he died, he physically, bodily rose from the dead. And over a period of 40 days, he appeared to over 500 people who saw him risen from the dead. That's why I trust Jesus. I can't prove him, you're absolutely correct, I can't prove him. But the overwhelming evidence is Jesus Christ is reliable. That's why I take a step of faith and trust in him. Now, would you
Why?
give me an
Because
option?
he's reliable?
Pardon?
Because he's reliable?
Yes. I trust people who are reliable, who give me evidence that they're credible and reliable. And the reason that I trust Jesus Christ is because the overwhelming evidence is he is reliable in a way that none of the options are. Give me a better option for my faith in Jesus.
You want to have eternal happiness?
Yeah,
There's no more sure way in your mind. You're as sure as anyone can be
right.
until you actually die and experience.
That's right. I can't prove that I'm going to heaven. I'm convinced I'm going to heaven because Jesus promised eternal life to everyone who trusts in him. And the evidence is Jesus doesn't lie. The evidence is Jesus said, I'm going to die and rise from the dead. And the historical evidence is he pulled it off. Ma'am, I can promise you, if you die and rise from the dead, I will listen very, very carefully to everything you have to say. Why? Because the evidence is you are amazingly reliable.
So, does everyone listen to everything Lazarus said?
Well, Lazarus didn't raise himself from the dead. It was Jesus who raised Lazarus from the dead. And yes, Lazarus put his faith in Christ. And when Thomas saw Jesus risen from the dead, Thomas hit the floor and said, my Lord and my God. Why? Because the evidence was Jesus is reliable. He was dead. He's risen from the dead.
So basically you're saying like mass hallucination.
No. No, the resurrection appearances of Christ, when you read the Gospels, are clearly not mass hallucinations. In Luke chapter 24, when Jesus appears risen from the dead to his apostles, they think we're hallucinating. And Jesus walks right up to them and says, grab hold of me and see. A spirit does not have flesh and bone the way you see I have. Give me some food to eat it. And so he ate food in front of them. So he was dealing with that precise, excellent question you're raising. Hey, it's all hallucination. And Jesus says, no, it's really me. I have really risen from the dead. Now, what do you think about Jesus Christ? Who do you think he was?
I don't really know. I haven't studied the Bible or anything that much, but I believe he probably was a great man that touched, obviously, thousands and thousands of people in a very profound way. Now, whether he was the Son of God and whether he actually was resurrected and this and that, I have no idea. I would, if I was to guess, I would say no, just because of my secular beliefs, but I don't know for sure.
Okay, why do you hold secular beliefs?
Why do I hold secular beliefs? Because I've formed them based on everything that I've been able to take in my short 23 years.
What is love, according to your secular beliefs?
Well, to be consistent, I have a very difficult time defining that too. It's a feeling, and it can be different for a lot of people. Love for one person could be totally different than love for another person. So,
but if your secular view is right, then love is simply a biochemical reaction, maybe very complex, but if there is no supernatural God, then love is simply a biochemical reaction.
I think I could simplify it to that. I could agree with that.
So, when she looks you in the face and says, I love you, you understand what that means is there are some biochemical reactions going off in my body, and I use the word love to describe these biochemical reactions. That's all it is.
Body and mind and, and my future plans for you and all those things compiled for this word that we've chosen, yeah.
Uh-huh. In fact, if you keep on thinking about it, you begin to realize we don't have free will. Free will is an illusion if your secular worldview is right. Because free will implies that I have a personality, a will that goes beyond the biochemical reactions. There's actually an I. But if we embrace the secular worldview, we understand, no, there's no I. There's simply complex biochemical reactions. I am a machine. Complex as all get out, but I'm just a machine.
It's something but I think just because there's something that we can't explain, it doesn't mean you have to go to a default explanation such as or God or whatever your default explanation for that thing is. I can't explain it, but that doesn't mean that your explanation is correct either.
Yeah, but the pickle that you're in is you have already reduced reality with your secular worldview. Your secular worldview has crossed off God, and you've said everything's matter and energy. Fine. You've done the reductionism, not me. Now, if what you say is true, that everything is matter and energy, then there is no I, there's no me that goes beyond the complex biochemical reactions.
I agree.
And everything that this body does is simply a result of the complex biochemical reactions programming me a certain way.
Yeah.
Therefore, if I go up and kick him in the jaw, and you ask me, why did you do it? And I say, because I had to do it. My biochemical reactions program me to go up and kick him in the jaw. What do you say to me?
You should get a better hold of your complex biochemical reactions.
But there's no me to get a hold of the complex biochemical reactions. Because remember, You have reduced me to simply biochemical reactions.
No, I haven't reduced it. I think there is an I. I just can't explain the I to you. But just because I can't explain the I to you, doesn't mean that I agree with your personal concept of the I either. So
Yes,
I think there is an I that controlled that kick. It's just I'm not wise enough to explain that I to you, neither scientifically or philosophically.
Yes, but the problem is the secularist has already limited reality to matter and energy.
Well, this particular secularist hasn't. I think there is more to that I, and I just can't explain it, nor can I explain it through any particular religion at this point.
Well, sir, my point is simple. The only way there can be an I, a free will, is if there is something more to me than simple matter and energy.
Okay.
There's got to be some type of soul, some type of personality, some type of individuality. And the only way that can exist is if there's more to reality than matter and energy. And secularism limits reality to matter and energy. That's the whole point of evolution as an origin. The whole point of evolution as an origin is there is no God. We're just matter and energy evolved to a higher order. The problem is your experience of love, your experience of free will, your experience of moral absolutes violates that worldview so violently. What do you think about a guy battering his wife? Do you think that's okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Then you're being consistent. Okay, and I'm standing out here saying, for a man to batter his wife is absolutely wrong. And if you try and batter your wife, I'm going to do everything within my power to communicate to you, stop it. And then I will also go and call the police. And if needs be, I will try and physically intervene. Why? Because I'm convinced that that woman has an innate value and dignity, and someone battering her is absolutely evil. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're right. Maybe everything's relative. But if I believe what you say, that everything's relative, then I have no business stopping a guy from battering his wife. That's his definition of good. And if I believe that everything's relative, I can't be so arrogant as to tell a man, stop battering your wife. That's his trip.
All right, but what about her trip? I mean, what if she's not happy with it?
Well, live and let live. It's everybody's own decision. See, moral relativism is an intellectual option. It's a practical impossibility. If you're a moral relativist, just think about your position on battered wives, abused children, homosexual rights, and abortion rights. And if you're a moral relativist, whatever your position is on those 4 points, you have to acknowledge that the opposite of your position is equally valid. I don't think you live that way.
No, I do, exactly.
You do live that way?
Yeah. Absolutely. Adamantly. And my goal in life is to give everybody the freedom that I think that they deserve. Freedom to be evil or the freedom to be good. Like, whatever.
Good. And you and I would fundamentally disagree there. I don't call it freedom to be evil. I call that moral license.
I missed you on that.
All right? For you to whoop up on a woman is not freedom. It's moral license. It's being irresponsible.
Okay.
For you to put machine gun bullets into the bodies of children in a McDonald's is not moral freedom. That's moral license. And I will seek to stop you. Not because I'm arrogant, because I think that my morality is better than yours, but because I am convinced that those little children in whose bodies you're spraying machine gun bullets have an intrinsic, innate value because they're created in the image of God. Okay. And when you put the machine gun bullets in their bodies, not only do you harm them, but you possibly are killing them, right. And that's an attack on a person, and it's an attack on the God in whose image that person's created.
Okay, I think they also have an intrinsic value. Nothing to do with like being godly or anything, but just by being alive and being able to feel pain. And I will try probably harder than you would to stop that person. Why?
But the one thing is very clear.
Okay, even if it only is because it makes me feel bad to see little kids being hurt. Maybe it's completely selfish.
Good.
It doesn't matter.
But then if you're a moral relativist, you've got to acknowledge that obviously the guy who's spraying the machine gun bullets in the little children's bodies is obviously getting a thrill from it. That's why he's doing it. So it's just your thrill versus his thrill.
Right.
Now my point is, I don't think you really believe that. Do you? Do you really live that out consistently?
I believe that both are saying.
Live what out exactly?
God would not.
that if a guy rapes, well, that's his pathway to thrill in life. And that is just as legitimate as your path, which is, no, you don't rape.
Right.
Do you think that those are both equally legitimate paths in life?
Legitimate?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, I argue that for a guy to rape a woman is illegitimate. It's evil. It's wrong.
Okay.
It's an abuse of the power that they have.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this episode. Hit that subscribe button. We'd love for you to join the family. Also, want to invite you to our church in New Canaan, Connecticut. It's New Canaan High School, and it meets Sundays at 9:30 a.m.